You just watched a tutorial for Cards and Castles 2, one of our other sponsors, where I learned how to play the game, and I hopefully showed you how to play the game too. The game's a lot of fun. I only played through the tutorial and a few casual games, but it's very promising. I'm Tandy. This is Bomat. Say hi, Bomat.
Hi, Boatman.
We are into the losers bracket here. Now, these players that we're going to be talking about right now are 1 and 2, and they have their back against the wall. If they lose, they're out. Once you hit 3 losses, you're done. If you hit 3 wins, you move to day 2. These players, if they win, they'll be moving to the elimination pod. That'll be the next round, where they're fighting for the last few slots into the top 8. We're going to be starting off here with, which one do we say?
Dingo.
YungDingo versus Nicholas Rausch. YungDingo is playing a really interesting Amethyst steel deck. Why don't you give us a little insight into what it looks like?
Yeah, so Amethyst Steel, not a color combination we see a lot of. This deck is built kind of like Ruby Amethyst, with
Mm-hmm.
a lot of card draw and a lot of control elements, with Grab Your Sword, Smash, and actually no copies of Smash, 4 copies of Fire the Cannons.
Right.
And that's because Dingo is trying to take advantage of both the efficiency of that card and the synergy with Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger.
Yeah, his opponent is going to be YungDingo, a Magic the Gathering streamer dipping his toes into Lorcana, and YungDingo. Oh, excuse me, is Nicholas Rausch. I was doing them backwards. Nicholas Rausch is actually one of our last chance qualifier. Or sorry, one of our invitational qualifier winners from a few weeks ago on September 30th. Took down the event with a very similar, if not the same, deck list. I think he cut one Fire the Cannons for another Stitch Carefree Surfer, but other than that, looks relatively similar. This Amber Steel Aggro deck is something we've seen a lot. So without further ado, you've waited long enough. The players have waited long enough. Let's head on down to the feature match area and watch to see who gets eliminated and who's still alive. Nicholas Rausch versus YungDingo. That's Amber Stitch Bliss versus Steel Amethyst Control. All right. See who's on the play here. Dingo starts off with inking Mickey Wayward Sorcerer. Now, going to go to Nick Rausch and see if he wants to deploy any of these 1-drops. Inks a Smash. Here's a Stitch New Dog. A common 1-drop for the Amber decks.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this deck list from Dingo performs. As compared to Ruby Amethyst, the big thing you miss out on is hard removal in Dragonfire, Maleficent, and Be Prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a lot more incidental damage from Grab Your Swords, Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, and then you see at the top of Dingo's hand there, Hans, 13th in line. It's a really interesting card that can kind of peck away at whatever's left of your opponent's characters after you play Grab Your Sword. And the Fire of the Cannons takes down the first threat from Nick Rausch, and Dingo was able to follow that up with a Captain Hook. And here comes the Simba, but nothing to protect.
Yeah, no need to protect it, right? Or no need to play it in bodyguard mode. You don't want to expose it to the challenge from Captain Hook. We're going to draw a card with Maleficent, Sorceress, passing the turn back. Rausch here has Rockstar, nothing to put it on yet, so going to go ahead and put it into the Inkwell. I see a whole new world floating around over there, but here's an aerial, and that's going to be looking to maybe sing that whole new world next turn. Going to reveal, grab your sword.
And this game, I think, is really going to show the power of Grab Your Sword. It's been one of the standout cards this weekend, last night especially, and Nick is up against a less creature-focused deck in Amethyst Steel that still plays plenty of creatures, and the one-sided nature of Grab Your Sword is just going to turn it into a very swingy card for him.
All right, we're going to sing Friends on the Other Side, draw a couple, going to ink a Beast Hard-Headed, and now we're looking to deploy something defensive here that doesn't die to grab your sword, because the aerial is going to freely sing it next turn and potentially sweep it up. Looks like we have a Captain Hook. This is the 4-cost steel Captain Hook. What's the surname on it? I know you know.
Captain of the Jolly Roger.
Captain of the Jolly Roger is going to get back that 1-cost removal spell. Fire the Cannons! The removal spell is uninkable, but you often see it in steel decks because of its efficiency. We're going to start off with singing Grab Your Sword. It's going to deal 2 damage to all the opposing characters, including the ready Captain Hook, and that gets taken out by the Fire of the Cannons from Nicholas Rausch. Fire the Cannons all over the place, eh?
Yeah, so Captain of the Jolly Roger over here was one of the earlier cards revealed in Lorcana's lifespan, which was around when I started picking up the game and Captain Hook was one of the more popular cards in that point in time,
Hmm.
partially because the card pool was so limited. You know, we knew less than half of the set, but also it's just a pretty compelling card on its face. You know, it gets you some great value, and Fire the Cannons is a solid enough card on its own. But people started to play fewer and fewer copies as inkability became important.
Right. I think that's a great point, and it's one thing that most people don't really take into consideration when deck building early on. But as you play the games and you realize that uninkables are often a trap, or you can only play a certain number before it starts to become a serious problem in construction.
Yeah.
But here we have an explosive turn from Nicholas Rausch. We're going to start off by singing a whole new world, and now we get first crack with 7 cards in hand to deploy some threats to the board. We also have some protection with Simba Bodyguard and a Captain Hook Forceful Duelist that can quest for 1. We'll see if Rausch wants to do either of those things. And he does. We're going to start with Simba, maybe to sing, maybe to quest. We're going to quest for 2, up to 3.
Yeah, this is a good spot to follow up with Tinkerbell, I think. Uh, Always going to be a threatening card for an opponent with characters. And it's followed up by 2 more characters. This is risky. Dingo being a steel deck means he has access to both Giant Fairy and Grab Your Sword.
Would you say it's Risky Dingo?
No, YungDingo. Try to
Okay.
keep up.
Okay, my bad. All right. Captain Hook goes after the Simba Bodyguard, and now we come to the time to see if Dingo has Grab Your Sword. If he does, this is going to be pretty backbreaking for Nicholas Rausch, though. Still has quite a few cards in hand to potentially protect. I don't know that Dingo has it, but we're going to start with inking a Magic Broom. We have 6 ink at our disposal. I see a Fire the Cannons. Oh, I do see the Grab Your Sword. This could be a almost full clear, leaving just 1 character on the table for Roush. And here's 2 to everything. Grab your sword. How's that song go?
You know, I think the first of all, I don't know. Second, I think they kind of changed the name of it. If you look at the soundtrack, it's something like the Villagers Fight Song or something like that, but they wanted to make it sound
Cool.
more cool, more actionable,
Yeah.
something like that. It's a little bit of a weirder song in the songbook for Lorcana.
All right. Well, back Roush's way, we begin with the powerful Rapunzel, gifted with healing. We're going to heal up that Tinkerbell and challenge the Captain Hook. Going to put some damage on it. I believe it's 3 damage, if I'm not mistaken. Is it 3/4? Is that correct?
It is.
All right. If we could go fix that dice, Mr. Director, real quick, I'd appreciate it. The Tinkerbell should just have 3 damage on it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll try to get that fixed before it comes up. But, oh, never mind. They fixed it. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and Nick, you know, a bit of a gamble playing out the Lilo and the Captain Hook on the previous turn. Of course, aware of Grab Your Sword in Dingo's deck, but he gets paid off pretty well if Dingo doesn't have it, and even if there is a Grab Your Sword, he knew it would give him an opportunity to draw cards with Rapunzel, which is a fine consolation prize.
Dingo draws for turn, finds another Grab Your Sword, doesn't clear the board here, probably not being cast, but can finish off this Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician with Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, dealing 1 to everything, and 1 damage on the Rapunzel, and that's it for Dingo. We're going to go back Roush's way.
Yeah, one of the traps you can fall into against a Rapunzel is a lot of the time when your opponent gets down the first one, if it's good enough, it'll draw them into a second Rapunzel, and they just kind of chain into each other. But Tinkerbell is only going to leave 1 damage on this first Rapunzel, meaning Nick is just going to follow up with a Rockstar.
Yeah, he has a 1 cost Lilo in hand, which he can ink something and play the Lilo and draw a card. It does expose it to being challenged by the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, which is potentially problematic and very dangerous. So I would expect him to do nothing here, except maybe play an ink. And I think that's what he's really trying to decide. He has a couple Rapunzels hanging out that are quite good in the matchup sometimes. And we've already seen 1 at play. And we'll see if he wants to ink the Giant Tinkerbell or anything like that too. Okay, gonna ink a backup Rockstar. And we are gonna use it, and we're gonna draw a card.
Yeah, this giant fairy for Dingo is gonna be okay. You're pretty happy to challenge a Lilo and get that trigger off, but it's not gonna be the most consequential thing in the world, unless Dingo has something like multiple fire the cannons and a grab your sword. There are combinations of cards that really let Dingo run away with this. But any characters that Dingo leaves in play are going to be able to enable Stitch Carefree Surfer at some point in this game, which is going to be really hard for a deck with no hard removal in this Amethyst Steel to be able to deal with.
All right, back Dingo's way. We're going to draw 2 with friends on the other side. You'd like to see that at the start of someone's turn when they have a bunch of
Yeah.
cards in hand, especially when you've left yourself somewhat vulnerable. I think a more scary turn would have been something like another Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, maybe some challenging going on, maybe a grab your sword or some cannons happening. So we're going to challenge, and that's going to allow us to do 2 damage to something. We're going to go at the Rapunzel, and that means that it's going to fall to fire the cannons if Dingo has it in hand. Inks another tiny tactician. And there's a Captain Hook, Jolly Roger, gonna fire the cannons from the yard. Now Rapunzel down, back Nick Roush's way, but he has an active Rockstar, one of the most powerful characters in the game, and let's see what he can do for the turn.
And I think Dingo does have access to another copy of Grab Your Sword available, and if so, I like the use of Captain Hook here. Leaving a Rockstar active is a great way to just, let your opponent use up a turn cycling through a bunch of characters, and then if you can clean those up with Grab Your Sword, you're as happy as you can be against a Rockstar in that exchange.
All right, Rausch at the ready. Now can attack the Tinkerbell for 3, leaving his Stitch alive, and then he can play a big Tink to finish it off, and also has the option to gift it with healing his, and that's okay. Interesting. We're gonna draw 3. I like it.
Yeah, this does let Dingo, of course, take the Rockstar down uh, with the Giant Fairy, but it'll be off the board, and that's about the. That's been putting in a lot of work, been a relevant body.
All right. Choosing to play a ready Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician instead of that 1-drop Stitch New Dog to draw a card off of the Rockstar, valuing Dingo being essentially forced to send the damaged Tinkerbell into the Stitch Rockstar in hopes to deal 2 damage, errantly against one of the other characters and not finish it off.
Yeah. Now, Dingo, we're getting to the point in the game where Dingo's, I would say powerful finishers, it's really just the one with 4 copies of Elsa, Snow Queen, I believe. That's usually going to be how Dingo is looking to finish out games and lock his opponent out towards the end. But much more of a mid-range character base for this Amethyst Steel deck,
Right.
as compared to Ruby Amethyst. Trading off, thinking about where we want to throw this Giant Fairy damage.
Yep. Matters quite a bit. 2 on the Rapunzel doesn't do a lot, but 2 on anything doesn't do a lot unless you have Fire the Cannons or Grab Your Sword to finish it off. Leaving any character with damage on it means that Rausch can punish with another Rapunzel. Here's a Mickey, Wayward Sorcerer, and that combined with Brooms can maybe do some damage later, but for this turn, if you're Nick Rausch, you're pretty happy seeing those 2 plays. And now, Captain of the Jolly Roger gonna gain a lore. Is it Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger?
It is.
That sucks. That's not fun. That's like hard to say.
I understand. What would you rather be? Just Captain Hook
Of the
of
Jolly,
the Jolly
Roger?
Roger?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Captain, Captain. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Hey, that's another Robin Williams movie. Did you know one of the main characters in Dead Poet Society? His name's Todd Anderson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you
Ethan
get that a lot?
Hawke's. I didn't, but I just thought it was kind of cool.
It is.
Back Roush's way, we have a surviving board of Rapunzel and a 2 damage Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician. We'll see what Rausch wants to do here to prepare against the mid-range onslaught from Dingo. Both players kind of just jockeying for position, clearing each other's board. After Rausch's big draw 7 earlier, both players are flush with resources, a commonality when dealing with a whole new world. You see that all the time. All right, 1 damage into the Captain Hook, 3 damage on the Rapunzel, and we're going to draw 3 cards.
Easy as that.
Okay. Now what? Handful.
And notable exclusion. You wouldn't really expect to see it, of course, but all the other steel decks in this event are playing a whole new world. YungDingo is not. So Nick can kind of feel free to fill up his hand as much as he wants. It's not really at risk of getting thrown away.
Yeah, the squeeze of Whole New World and Grab Your Sword in a lot of matchups is if you play to the board, you get beat up by Grab Your Sword. If you hold cards in hand, you get beat up by a Whole New World. And so the steel decks with Aerial and the Amber combination allow for you to just have essentially complete control over either half of your opponent's plays or draws. And, it's just something that Nick Rausch's Amber steel deck's really leaning into.
Right.
All right, decides to play Protective Cub, but not in bodyguard mode, letting Rapunzel get eaten up. I kind of like that play because that Rapunzel is unable to challenge too much in combat, and the Simba can maybe trade up later for something or protect something a lot more valuable.
And I think in these next couple turns, we're going to start seeing Dingo's deck kind of do what it's best at, which is spreading damage around really efficiently with the combination of Grab Your Sword and Fire the Cannons. But it remains to be seen whether it'll be enough, because Nick Rausch still has plenty of cards in hand.
Yep, but now we see a partial clear, 3 characters down from the Grab Your Sword in the challenge, and now Rausch going to need to do some rebuilding. It more so just comes down to whether or not Dingo has the ability to capitalize on this favorable board position. We're going to go questing, gaining 3 with Tinkerbell and Mickey Mouse up to 4, and now we're going to go back Nicholas Rausch's way and see if he can come back into the game. That's a Stitch Carefree Surfer. That's extremely large and drawing 2 cards in just a moment, more than likely. But Rausch might have a different sequence that he prefers. We'll see what the play is.
Yeah, Carefree Surfer is a bit more of a problem for Dingo's deck, but we do actually see in play one of his kind of pseudo answers to cards like that in Elsa. If Dingo builds up enough of a board, Elsa can make sure that any new character that comes down becomes vulnerable, and Dingo can kind of make some good trades, though that Carefree Surfer is big enough to eat up anything that comes at it.
Rausch in the tank, perhaps the most important turn of this game for him. He has a lot to worry about, a lot of damage on his characters, so a future AoE effect, like, I say AoE effect, but area of effect damage spell, like Tinkerbell, Grab Your Sword, potentially problematic. We'll see if Rausch wants to try to navigate around that somehow, or just say, you know what, I don't care. Let's just tap out, play Carefree Surfer, draw some cards.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to jam the Surfer here.
I'm happy to trade Simba into Captain Hook, personally.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. No reason you can't do both. I've been really impressed with Carefree Surfer this weekend.
Same. All right, Rausch is discombobulated. All right, here it comes. Believe he tapped 1 too many ink.
You're right.
But, whatever. Not my problem. Here's a new dog.
Yep.
Do we challenge? I feel like challenge makes a lot of sense because the Simba is so vulnerable to a future Tinkerbell Giant Fairy that trading makes...
Yeah, you want to get rid of those characters with only 1 willpower left.
Get something out of them before they're gone for
Exactly.
no value. Okay, back Dingo's way.
It is now staring down 8 willpower, Stitch Carefree Surfer, that is going to be in the way.
Well, not only is it in the way, it's almost insurmountable. 8
Yeah.
8 willpower against steel is enormous. and just requires an immense amount of challenging if you can't trade for it one for one. It really preys on opponents who don't have direct removal like Let It Go and Dragonfire.
Yeah. To once again quote Brennan DeCandio, willpower equals cards, and this is definitely a matchup where that's the truth.
All right, we're going to play a Magic Broom, 1 cost reduction thanks to the Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer, and we're going to shuffle a Friends on the other side back in the deck to hopefully get some more card draw later on. Right now, we just have a couple of damage effects in hand, a Grab Your Sword, which we're going to go ahead and play, and a Fire the Cannons, which will finish off the Rapunzel and allow Dingo to quest for quite a bit.
Yeah, Dingo's deck quite a bit worse at singing Grab Your Sword than the Amber Steel and
Right.
Amber Sapphire decks. Just Amber Steel decks that we've been seeing that are packed full of characters that are in the deck specifically for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's because with only those 4 copies of that one 5-cost song in Dingo's deck and no Whole New Worlds, Dingo's a little happier to just, pay 5 ink,
Right.
get a good board clear out of it.
Okay, Nick Rausch's turn, going back his way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Stitch Carefree Surfer can chew up any of the opposing characters here that are exerted. We're going to start with a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. This one's not going to change the math on the Carefree Surfer at all, but it does get down a pretty scary threat for next turn. And see what we're going to go after. Nothing. We're going to sing Grab Your Sword, so this is going to clear the Elsa, the Broom, and then Fairy plus Mickey Mouse both go to 3 damage each. So Nick really valuing having as much willpower on his character as possible. Gonna go ahead and play Be Our Guest to mostly in the turn. We might ink and play this Aladdin if we haven't played an ink this turn.
Yeah, that was pretty good value from that Grab Your Sword, especially if Nick ever follows it up with another Tink or another Grab Your Sword. The fewer characters Dingo has, the fewer cards he can throw at this Carefree Surfer.
Well, we can send 5 into it and not quite finish it.
Yeah.
We can also loot with the Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician to try to find something better. Or we can do nothing. I think do nothing is probably bad. Looting opens you up pretty hardcore to some stuff, but it is what it is.
Top
We
of the
have
deck,
8.
not particularly kind to Dingo.
I
That
saw
was
an
just-
Elsa. I wonder which Elsa it is. I don't-
It's the baby.
the baby Elsa. The one that's good for shifting, but as we know, it's just as good at casting for 8. I don't know if we need the shift necessarily, but it's nice to
Right.
have in some matchups for sure.
I've liked seeing the evolution of deck lists where, at the beginning of the first chapter constructed, people were jamming maximum copies of these smaller characters. But now at this point, Ruby Amethyst has cut the smaller Elsa entirely. We're seeing some Amber Steel decks down to maybe 2 copies of Tiny Tactician. And it kind of depends on the character, right? Like
Right.
Stitch New Dog is a very easy card to fit into your deck list. But Tiny Tactician less so.
All right, we're going to go challenging with Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, and then we're going to go play another Tinkerbell, and this is going to deal some AoE damage to the other characters. All right, we have a update on one of our backup matches. Brian Koval defeats Taryn Huck, and the Huck brothers are officially eliminated
Ouch.
from the event. 3 losses for Taryn and 3 losses for Kyle. Unfortunately for the co-owners of Apex Gaming, their day and tournament is over, but Brian Koval is still alive. We are deep into game 1 of this losers pod between Nick Rausch and YungDingo. These players were 1 and 2 in our initial pods, and this is an elimination match. If they lose, they're out. If they win, they get to play one more match to see if they can be victorious. But Dingo, with another dead draw, says, you know what, Nick, you got this one, buddy.
Yeah, Nick really
got
turned on the Jets in that last turn with a Stitch Rockstar, a couple characters, and then a full quest. Even once Dingo's at the point of top decking, especially without any card advantage engines in play, one Grab Your Sword was really not going to do anything there. So Nick just said, you know what, this game, I'm going to end it in a turn or 2.
The Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational is brought to you by TCGplayer.com. Make sure to check out TCGplayer.com for all of your TCG singles needs. They are the marketplace, whether it's Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, or now Disney's Lorcana. They got your singles. Every local game store I know sells cards on TCG Player, including Apex Gaming. So make sure to check out tcgplayer.com, and big thank you for them for being our flagship sponsor. Also, thank you to Ultimate Guard. They make some of the best TCG supplies in the business, including the Katana sleeves and the Archive deck box. Those Katana sleeves are easily my favorite sleeves on the market, and the Archive deck box is a great item to store things like your cube or commander. It's a giant deck box that can, I believe, hold around 900 cards. So,
Wow.
if you are interested in those, make sure to ask your local game store, and if they don't have them, ask them why. Ultimate Guard's a no-brainer. Thank you so much to our last sponsor, Cards and Castles 2, the new game from the creators of Cards and Castles 1.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not. And they have created an awesome tactics card battler that you can download for free and play right now on Steam. We're going to link it in the chat for you. From Red Team Games, excuse me. And they are going to be... sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But big shout out to Cards and Castles 2. Make sure to check them out on Steam. We'll link in the chat right now so you can go to Steam and download it for free. It's a free-to-play game. And if you use code Apex Gaming, you get 5 free booster packs. Before this round, we showed me playing the tutorial, and we have a couple other videos we'd like to bring you between our rounds to give you a better idea of what the game looks like and how it plays. Thank you so much to Cards and Castles 2. Now, The Lost Boys is a project of mine that I've been working on with my co-host here and a few other folks. And we'd love it if you followed us on all socials. That's Lost Boys, LOR, on Twitter, Patreon, etc., etc., etc. Thank you so much. All right, YouTube's the big one, though. YouTube.com/LostBoysLOR. We're underway. Game number 2 of the Losers Pod. YungDingo down a game, leads with Simba. Future King, Nick Rausch, on the draw. Going to play Aladdin as Ink and use it here to play a 1-drop, it looks like.
And Simba, Future King, not the best, but it does shine in exactly this spot. Nick had the option to play Lilo, but it's pretty dissuasive Simba on the other side.
Here's Magic Broom. You going to put the hook back in?
No.
No. It took me like 2 seconds to realize why there's a hook in the bin.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
All right, here's a Prince Eric. This thing is a nice little challenger. If we can get Prince Eric on the screen, we haven't seen him do a ton. It's more so the threat of him is what dictates the pace of a lot of the games. And if you're a newer player and you've played against Prince Eric, you've likely said, "Oh man, I can't believe this thing has eaten up all my characters." It has 3 willpower, which is surprisingly high for such a small cost. It challenges for 3, which means it's going to trade up against a lot of the 3 drops and 4 drops, but it's also going to dodge most of the 2 drops, even while it's only dealing 1 damage on the defense. So.
Right. Even grab your sword. If you can live through an opponent's grab your sword and be able to trade up, like you mentioned, that can go a long way towards turning the tide back in your favor. And here now, there's a lot of characters coming down on both sides. There's not really going to be much action for a few turns here until probably one player finds a grab your sword. And then Nick is in great position to do that, especially deploying a singer here on turn 3.
Now, one thing I'd like to note is that if you watch novices play this game for the first time, or even after like a couple weeks or whatever, you'll notice that the majority of them almost quest at random. Right?
Yeah.
They just say, "Oh, I can quest, I'll quest," without really realizing the implications of it. But every time you quest, you open yourself up to being challenged by your opponent's stuff. And what you'll notice in most of the games we've watched over this weekend is that players will very rarely quest in the opening turns to prevent being vulnerable to those things, and also to essentially build up the board. And then once the boards are both built up, one person breaks serve with a grab your sword or some combination of things, and often slaughters the opponent. And I think that you can really learn something by watching how these players pilot some of the more popular decks in the format.
Right. So Nick Dingo at least got a slightly larger creature down in that Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer, but I think whenever Nick does decide to pull the trigger on this grab your sword, it's going to be pretty effective. First, a shift.
It's pretty effective. The like new thing in Pokemon where it's like it's kind of mid. Like you're probably gonna get a draw.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of that in the TCG. My deck is pretty effective. I went 2, 2, and 3.
Yeah. I know that Pokemon's coming back in a big way. I haven't personally
Yeah.
played the card game myself, but many of my friends, including Carmen Clemperens, designer at Wizards of the Coast, she's been flying around the United States playing some of those regional events, really, really digging it. And we've actually gotten quite a few people playing Lorcana because the Pokemon regional sold out. So they're like, I guess I'll play Lorcana.
Wow.
That's where Spees came from, apparently.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right. Well, we have some developments here. Shift, Stitch, Rockstar, and then Sing, Grab Your Sword, and that's 1, 2, 3 characters down. And Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer with 2 damage on it. Rausch here also has the ability to sing again, and we're gonna sing a whole new world, whole new place. Oh, he doesn't sing it. I lied. He quested for 1.
Yeah, so I think what we just saw there is Nick changing his mind in the middle of that turn because see, what I thought was going on was like you said, a grab your sword plus a whole new world, but Nick decides that's not going to be uh, as effective as he'd hope.
Okay, well, we have a challenge here with Mickey plus Grab Your Sword to knock off Stitch Rockstar. That is a clear for that card, but leaves 2 characters on the table. And now we have the powerful turn of a whole new world after deploying some threats, and Nick Roush is going to refuel. Young Dingo gets to refuel too, but he's 4-0 on characters, and Nick Roush can still quest for a few. We'll see if he wants to deploy any more threats. I think he still has an ink drop for the turn as well.
Right, and an interesting micro decision for these whole new world turns. Sometimes you'll see Nick play out the last other card as ink, and sometimes he'll play it as a character. In this case, the new dog came down as a character, but might be punished for that decision because it looks like Dingo did draw a whole new world. Did draw a grab your sword off of that whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
So this stitch might have been a little more effective as ink.
Yeah, I mean, Grab Your Sword here from Dingo could be backbreaking for Roush. While it, is normally very effective in the matchup, the one from the previous turn has left 2 somewhat invulnerable creatures now prone to the one he's about to play on the following turn.
Soften them up.
Yeah. Give him the 1-2. Roush here contemplating on what to ink. Looks like it might be a Stitch Rockstar since he has another one in hand.
Yeah, the Stitch Rockstars are a motivation for Nick to play out that initial new dog on this turn, but it looks like he's not going to be paid off.
Okay, back Dingo's way. This looks like a pretty easy grab your sword turn. It's going to take most of his turn, but I think it's worthwhile. It is a full board clear. 5 down. 5 characters to the bin.
No need for the dice.
Yeah.
And no follow-up for Dingo.
Yep,
So,
he actually inked a Simba, so choosing not to play that for turn so that he can keep his more powerful things online.
yeah.
Here's a Rockstar. This is a great follow-up for a sweeper effect because it's going to allow him to potentially refuel. We're going to go back Dingo's way. His deck is notoriously bad at killing large willpower characters from ready.
Yeah, and just a queen here for Dingo. This is going to be pretty good for him at propelling through this point in the game. 2 card advantage engines.
Yep,
even.
now the mirror. The queen and the mirror both look pretty nice here since both players are kind of being scrappy and the lore totals are low. If a magic mirror comes down when your opponent has 2 lore, no matter, unless it's turn 2. If your opponent has 2 lore on turn 2, magic mirror not great.
Yeah.
If your opponent has 2 lore on turn 6, magic mirror looks a little bit better. All right, here comes a flurry of characters off of the Stitch Rockstar. We're gonna go Lilo, Stitch, Aladdin, each replacing themselves. Aladdin again using all 6 ink. This is gonna present a very scary board for Dingo, and he's already got 2 grab your swords in the bin. He's gonna need a 3rd one to be able to handle this probably. I guess a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy could maybe get the job done.
That's true. This is a pretty good spot for a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, but Nick is definitely aware of that possibility or the 3rd grab your sword. But the fact that these characters replace themselves thanks to the Rockstar, it means Nick is happy to play this game for the next few turns. If he can keep reloading the board, Dingo can only have so many board wipes.
And Dingo is got the face of someone who's in dire straits. Oh, has the grab your sword? I lied. So we have the partial clear, 4 characters down, but they all replace themselves.
Yeah, still in dire straits, maybe.
Hmm. We're gonna ink Baby Elsa, and we're gonna play a Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician, which can threaten a shifted Big Fairy next turn. Gonna go back Rausch's way. 2 damage on the Rockstar. Can use it to sing, quest, or challenge. We'll see what he wants to do. Rapunzel can draw 2 and heal it if he has that. We're gonna start with Be Our Guest. If you're Dingo, every time someone starts with a card draw spell in their turn, when I feel like I'm losing,
Yeah.
I'm very happy because that means that they are choosing to improve their hand when I'm hoping that their hand is bad. So that means that their hand is bad.
Yeah, that's a good argument. We'll so Nick does find that Simba to keep the Rockstar train going, and these slightly larger characters, Simba, one of the few 2 drops with 3 willpower, are going to make it that much harder for Dingo to come back from these repeated board fills.
All right, Rausch has looks like another swordsman and 2 more Lilos that he can deploy. So those protected somewhat with the Simba bodyguard at the ready, but I'm not sure. I mean, Dingo's look. That's Stitch Rockstar. You can see he's like frustrated. It's like that's Stitch Rockstar, baby. You
Yeah.
gotta get that thing off the table. It's a refuel every turn. Army in a can.
Yeah, this is a we got that player cam for a second. That's a familiar face for anyone who watches Dingo streams.
Oh yeah,
When
the beans.
when-
My opponent has another bean.
exactly.
Dingo is a magic streamer as his profession, and is a very entertaining stream. And we're so glad to have him here at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio for the Lost Boys Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com. But he's got his back against the wall. Nick Rausch continuously putting up big boards that he needs to deal with, and I think 3 grab your swords have gone to the discard pile this game so far. We'll see if he has any other way to interact. Here's a Wayward Sorcerer and a Broom. Put back a grab your sword into the deck. That's a nice one to add back to the deck in the spot.
Yeah, the deck is a little larger than it often is when Ruby Amethyst is making this play, so it could be a while until we see that grab your sword.
Okay, only 2 lore for Rausch, so we still have quite a lot of game left on both sides. Even though I think Dingo is a little behind overall, I think that it's pretty close. And without Rausch threatening to start questing, Dingo always has the out of just another grab your sword or something similar to get back into the game. We're going to use a Tiny Tactician to sing Friends on the Other Side. We're going to draw 2. Found Fire the Cannons. That can't quite kill the Rockstar. This queen can draw.
Yeah, this is going to probably ensure that at least one of these Lilos lives through this turn, which is probably a better outcome than Nick Rausch could have even hoped for.
Right. Yeah, the base for Dingo for that turn, if he wanted to interact, was Queen challenges Simba, and Tiny Tactician challenges a Lilo to clear both and leave both his characters around. But instead, Dingo just going to dig for more answers, AoE effects. I keep saying that. AoE cards, and doesn't find any. And is going to be forced to pass back without much of an answer, but does have a Fire the Cannon, so we'll be able to take care of one of the 2 Lilos.
And Dingo does have access to plenty of Fire the Cannons, 1 in hand and 1, maybe 2 Captain Hooks, but only 2 damage at a time. If Nick can put out enough pressure, that could easily overwhelm what Dingo has going on.
All right, back Rausch's way. We're going to look to continue developing our board. We're going to start by singing a Be Our Guest. That one you're less happy to see if you're Dingo. You always want your opponent to be using their Inkwell to play card draw effects when you're behind. And here, though, we're singing it, so maybe we can find some big thing to play like Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, which we do. It's not as effective here as it could be, but maybe in conjunction with something else over the next few turns could be quite powerful, especially with something like Grab Your Sword and Fire the Cannons, which we see at least one of those in hand.
Yeah, and Nick did put those 2 copies of Stitch Carefree Surfer on the bottom, which surprised me a little. It's pretty good in this matchup, but decides that uh, characters are starting to turn sideways. This is going to be more of a Tinkerbell game. And,
Yeah, and the character he kept draws a card now instead of costing 7 to draw 2 cards later.
well, he kept the Giant Fairy.
Oh, excuse me. I thought he kept a Simba. That's my apologies.
But keeping Giant Fairy makes a lot of sense when you know you have a Tiny Tactician, though.
Okay, we have maybe stabilized if you're Dingo. Rausch doesn't really want to do a whole lot. We're going to go ahead and quest for 2 with the Lilo up to 4. This is game number 2. Dingo's down, back against the wall. This is an elimination match. The loser here goes home. Well, they get to hang out for another day and just hang out, but the loser here is out of the tournament. The winner will be fighting for their life in the elimination pod in just a little while. Nick Rausch looking like he's on the offensive. Broom deals 2. Comes back to hand thanks to Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer's ability. We're going to broom back. Guess what? Grab your sword. Goes back into the deck.
And these Simbas are putting up pretty good resistance against the Steel strategy, especially a deck like Dingo's with infinite amounts of 2 damage at a time. You're going to have to combine those to get through these Simbas, which is less efficient than Dingo would hope for.
Okay. Broom resolved. Shuffles the grab your sword back into the deck. He's going to hope to draw one of those quickly. He had 1 left in the deck a minute ago. Now he's got 3 left in the deck thanks to 2 broom activations and the Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. We're going to draw a card with the Queen. That's an Elsa Spirit of Winter. That's a heater. It can exert 2 opposing characters and they stay frozen for a few turns. Let's get Spirit of Winter on the screen. I don't know if we've looked at it today, but it's maybe the most powerful card in Amethyst, and it's certainly one of the most powerful in the Ruby Amethyst decks. And here, Dingo's using it with Amethyst Steel in conjunction with some early challenges to kind of combo kill stuff, but he's also using the 3-cost Elsa as a shift target. So a lot to love about Spirit of Winter in all sorts of decks that play Amethyst, but here it's looking quite good, and Dingo definitely needed something like that to get back in the game, and it looks like he's turning things around.
Yeah, throwing a bunch of resources at these Simbas and that Rockstar. As many fire the cannons as possible. Cannons have been fired, and Dingo is in pretty good shape, especially now that he has that engine off the field.
Okay, but we can shift Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, and we can sing Grab Your Sword to deal 3 to everything, or
Always scary.
so yeah, some combination of things. It's weird. Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician, when you just read the card, it doesn't mean anything. It's weak, right? It's 2/4, but most of these characters just have. Why did he spend so much to shift?
I don't know. It's been a long day.
He spent 5 or 6. It's impossible to tell. Okay, well, we're spending all what we got. We are 1 to everything, 2 to everything, and then a cannons to fire off to kill the Queen. That leaves just a Captain of the Jolly Roger on the table for Dingo, and a partial clear for Rausch puts things back firmly in his favor. We'll see if Dingo can reply with anything powerful.
Yeah, more captains or more fire the cannons, or grab your sword actually can let you get through this giant fairy.
Yeah, attack with that plus grab your sword is a clear, and then we'll be back to square 1, and I think we can even play a Captain Hook of the Jolly Roger and get back cannons. In fact, we don't even need to play grab your sword. We can just Jolly Roger and cannons down the fairy, and he does, and then we can also even play another character instead and cement our position on the board.
Yeah, and we are getting close to the point where it gets difficult for Nick Rausch to take advantage of Carefree Surfers. Now, I suppose he is only playing 3 copies, and 2 of those are on the bottom, so maybe less of a concern.
All right, looking at the hand, we see at least 1 Grab Your Sword, Tinkerbell, Tiny Tactician. I see a Cinderella.
I
That
see
thing
a smash,
well.
and I see a whole new world.
Cinderella doesn't see he keeps tapping 5 for 4 drops. I wonder if he can't see his own ink well.
It's very possible, honestly. This has happened a couple turns in a row now. But you're right about Cinderella. She does see play in a couple copies in various decks, just as additional copies of these cheaper characters that can still sing the important 5-cost songs. And Nick has corrected the ink. Todd's just going out there to remind them, make sure it's clear to everyone what's going on. I spoke to a player in our Invitational who had recently cut 2 copies of Cinderella to add in a couple copies of the Beast because Cinderella was, underperforming a little, though she's, always able to play those songs. You don't really get to take advantage of the other ability on Cinderella very often.
All right. You know how Just in Time is really good on 3, pretty bad on turn 4?
Yeah.
Singing a song like Grab Your Sword or whatever ahead of schedule via aerial, quite good on turn 4. A little bit weaker on turn 5.
Sure.
And without that extra card advantage ability, Cinderella significantly worse than aerial. But, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. You instead see people going towards maybe Mr. Smee to be a more efficient way to power up your Rapunzels. Cards like that. It was actually Tron is Bad, Ryan, who had cut 2 copies of Cinderella for 2 of the Steel Beast.
Oh, hard-headed. All right. Dingo fires back. Here's a Spirit of Winter. Elsa's going to come in and tap down 2 characters. And then Hook's going to eat 1.
Oh. One of the cards got attached to Dingo's sleeve there.
I think it was
that was in the discard.
Yeah, I believe it was in discard.
There it goes.
All right. Well, Elsa locks some stuff down, and then we got the challenge. See if he wants to do anything else. We're going to ink a Beast Hard-Headed. Want to try to ink as much as possible without being detrimental so that you can consistently activate Magic Mirror while playing other cards.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Mirror, right, is the more you ink, the more easily you can use the mirror. And the more easily you can use the mirror, the more you have to ink.
Right.
And that's how you see Ruby Amethyst and potentially also this Amethyst Steel deck from Dingo get into the board positions where they have, 20 ink or whatever and can just play whatever they want in a single turn.
Yeah, you also don't want to under ink against cards like A Whole New World that give both players a big refresh.
Exactly.
The fewer cards you have in hand when your opponent plays it, the better. We're going to start off here, Nicholas Rausch with Prince Eric, and then we're going to wheel, draw 7. Both players discard and draw fresh, but Dingo's going to get first crack at it, so I expect he'll be pretty happy to see this draw 7, considering the position he's in the game, and also how low on resources he was.
Yeah, Dingo, though, now with the largest character in play in that Elsa Spirit of Winter, and it could make life a little bit harder for Nick. It's going to be pretty difficult for Amber Steel to get off the battlefield.
Yeah. Okay, back Dingo's way. The Cinderella stays frozen. It'll be ready next turn if it's still there. Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger can hit it for 3, and then Elsa can finish it off, but it is a 2/5, so it's a little hard to beat without some help.
And we actually saw that was a pretty effective Elsa there. What Nick would have really wanted to do is sing that Whole New World and then take the opportunity to get first crack at the board.
Right.
But freezing it with Elsa prevented that.
Yeah. All the players so far here making great plays based on potential song and shifts.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly what's going to separate the good from the great players. It's just recognizing what your opponent's going to do in the future to beat you. All right, here is Elsa. Spirit of Winter going to tap down both of these Tinkerbells. And now, Captain Hook hits for 3. And cannons. Knock it down.
Boom.
Elsa going to chew up a Tinkerbell. Put some damage on it, but it's still got a lot of willpower left. Nicholas Rausch going to go back his way. No characters with any damage. This is exactly what Dingo wants. You don't want any value from Rapunzel. Finishes off with a Captain Hook.
Though Dingo still exposed a little to Rapunzel thanks to this Captain Hook, Nick is going to be able to get value if he wants to, but instead looting right away.
No, sir. That thing's frozen.
Ah, good point.
That draw was for the 10. All right, we do have Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, which deals 1/2 that Captain Hook and finishes it off. It does cost 6 in most of Rausch's turn. We'll see if that's what he wants to do. It is. We can also ink something and maybe smash to finish off Elsa. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Eric into the Inkwell. And then we're going to go back Nick Roush's way. It's 6-0 in favor of Nick with lore, but Dingo has a grip full, and he's getting to ready everything here and start his turn. And his opponent's not really in a great position, so you're happy to see that if you're a YungDingo fan, which I am. I actually am a big Nick Roush fan, too. Watching him
Yeah.
play that first Invitational qualifier, he played quite well, and still got a lot of tournament to left if he wins this match. Here's 3 damage to the Tinkerbell Giant or Tactician, and then gonna finish it off with a Giant Fairy. Now, see what else we have to add to the board. Here's the Queen, Wicked in Vain. This card advantage engine looks nice, and we're gonna go Questing +3.
Yeah, this is not a clear-cut decision whether to quest with the Elsa. There are combinations of cards that basically turn on Nick's Giant Fairy. If he's able to get any incidental damage onto that Elsa, the Giant Fairy can take care of it and then spread some damage around. But Dingo just decides that risk is worth getting the 3 lore because that can maybe add up into a win in the next, 5 turns or however this game ends up going.
Yeah, Rausch is really in the tank here because no matter what he does, if he decides to be interactive, the opposing Giant Fairy is going to squish him, or at least do some serious damage to his position. And he even has a Rapunzel to refresh his fairy after attacks. But we're going to start here, looks like, with Giant Fairy, deal 1 to everything. That's going to put 2 damage on the Elsa, and now a challenge with Giant Fairy will allow him to do some extra damage to another character. And then he can finish the turn by Rapunzeling and drawing 3 cards.
Well, the Elsa has 4 strength, meaning if this Tinkerbell Giant Fairy challenges, it'll be off the field, which means he has to draw a card with the Rapunzel now.
Tough.
And misses out on some, potential value later down the line just to take care of the Elsa right away.
Yeah. Well, we're going to challenge, and I would personally send 2 at the Queen because the Giant Fairy is likely going to attack and trade anyway. And that's
true.
What's happened. And now we're going to go back Dingo's way. A pile of ink and a grip full cards with Magic Mirror and the Queen at the ready. Let's see what he wants to do for the turn. A lot of potential plays, including, looks like another Giant Fairy can be played to finish off the Tinkerbell without being forced to challenge, which means his Tinkerbell Giant Fairy in play and the one he's going to play from hand are quite threatening in future turns.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fairies trading back and forth here. The nature of this damage being spread around means that characters
Get out the dice!
More and more vulnerable. And both players just know, that Giant Fairy is going to get some value. There's not really anything I can do to play around it if I want to progress the game at all.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Friends on the other side. And these, Dingo's hand 2, maybe 3, Hans 13th in line at this point. Those could go a long way towards helping him close out the game while taking control of his opponent's creatures a little.
All right, Dingo decides to quest with the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. Perhaps a mistake because it's going to allow fairies to bump into each other and finish off the Queen for very little investment here. Let's see what Rausch wants to do with this turn otherwise. I see a Carefree Surfer. Be Our Guest at the ready. Baby Stitch and another Rapunzel. So a lot of potential options. All right, looks like we have an update from one of our other feature matches. Brennan DeCandio defeats Zach Powers, and Brennan DeCandio will be moving on to our elimination pod next round. And Zach Powers, one of our qualifiers from October 14th last weekend, unfortunately is 3rd loss and out of the tournament. Back to the game at hand, Nick Roush plays a Rapunzel, heals the Giant Fairy for 1.
That's an important heal because now when the Giant Fairy takes down Dingo's Giant Fairy, Nick's Giant Fairy will still be around. Though, arguably that could be a downside if you're worried about Dingo's 3rd Giant Fairy coming back with a challenge.
Okie dokie. Kill the Queen. Everyone's fine. Trading everything because it all bounces back over time with extra damage. Whenever you challenge, you're opening yourself up to be challenged. And Dingo now Gonna have a window to go after Rausch's Giant Fairy, and Rausch doesn't play anything else. Interesting. Instead of Carefree Surfer, decides not to ink anything. Gonna hold on to Stitch New Dog, and maybe play around another sweeper damage effect.
Yeah, we did see Nick count his deck a couple turns ago. It was fairly healthy, 15, maybe 20 cards.
Fairly healthy. 15 cards left.
Yeah, but that might still be too few uh, for his liking. So maybe it seems like a little bit of a risk to play this Carefree Surfer.
Okay. Dingo also kind of afraid of decking. Gonna go Broomin' for Broom. We see this a lot in the Ruby Amethyst mirror matches because many of those games do come down to decking. Those decks are great at stalling out the opponent. And here with Dingo playing Amethyst and Steel, not quite as adept at interacting with the opponent's bigger characters, but quite strong at interacting with the smaller ones. Melissa
And
Sorceress goes in.
and I like this broom play from Dingo. He's kind of getting a read on Nick. He's counted his deck a couple times now. So Dingo likely afraid that Nick is going to try to win the game with a whole new world. So trying to hedge in that direction and protect the size of his deck.
All right, couple copies of Hans, 13th in line. And now we are in the driver's seat as YungDingo. Let's see if Rausch can come back in. We've had a very long game number 2 here with multiple whole new worlds being played. Both players have been flushed the entire game. Now we're going to start with Singing and Be Our Guest. Top 4 includes Rockstar, Ariel, and
Captain
Cinderella,
Hook
and a
Cinderella.
Captain Hook. 4 potential hits. My guess is probably going to be Ariel, since that one can find one of the bigger drops later on.
Though, if Tinkerbell was one of those cards, Tinkerbell plus Grab Your Sword lines up pretty well against what Dingo has going on with these Hanses. And it will be a Stitch Rockstar. Just one of the bigger threats left remaining in Nick's deck.
See if he wants to deploy it this turn or hold it. Without a ton of cards left in the deck, it's a little scary to draw a bunch of cards, but it seems like we have enough that we can play stuff for a while now. We're going to continue on. After the Carefree Surfer, we're going to play Simba Cub and Stitch New Dog. We're going to go back Dingo's way. Maybe we're going to quest for 2, but probably not.
Yeah, the more cards Dingo plays, the more Nick needs to draw and play in order to be able to fight through a bunch of challenging if he wants to end the game.
Okie dokie. We're going to go back Dingo's way. Shields are down. 2 characters exerted. Bodyguard not in protective mode. Dingo can do a ton of sweep damage, but also has multiple copies of Hans 13th in line. Let's get Hans 13th in line on screen because it's a card we haven't seen a ton today. I believe this is actually the first time I've even seen it on camera at all. But this 4-drop from Steel is a 3/3/2. That means it has 3 strength, willpower, and quest for 2. And it says whenever this character quests, you may deal 1 damage to chosen characters. So a pinger. If you play Magic, you'll think of this more like a prodigal sorcerer. And we're going to do some combo killing here. Here comes Tinkerbell. We're going to kill the Rapunzel and deal 2. 1 damage should be on the Tinkerbell. We're going to quest with Hans, deal 1 to Simba. I feel like we're about to sing something.
Yeah, if you're in Nick's seat, you're going, oh no, this is all set up.
Yeah, and this might be a little too much for Nick to handle. Here's 5. This is Grab Your Sword. 4 damage on the Rapunzel now. Sweeps everything else. Yeah, that should still have 4. And then Hans is going to quest, and it's going to kill that. That makes sense.
Sure.
Broom can go questing as well. Now we're firmly in the driver's seat as Dingo.
Yeah.
I'm going to go fix... I think the Tinkerbell should have a damage on it, so I'm going to go fix that. I'll be right back.
I agree. And the broom does quest. And the clock is on for Dingo. And it's going to take probably a combination of Grab Your Sword plus Tinkerbell. There's the die. If Nick wants to get back into this, it looks like it might not come down to decking, but I don't know the actual library counts. It's very possible that if one of these players is just over that breakpoint, that Nick might be able to squeeze out a win here, but Dingo does have a pretty commanding position. But those are the tools he needs. Grab your sword plus a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy off the top. Looks like it will allow Nick to clear most of this board. And there it is, 11 mana, 3 damage to everything,
Okay.
11 ink. That's the first time I've said mana today.
I've said creatures a bunch. I've said mana a couple of times. It's hard. We're
It
Magic
is.
players. It's hard to have different terminology with different games.
You can't teach a mid-20s dog new tricks.
Yeah, you can't teach a Stitch new tricks.
Stitch is actually very good at learning.
That's true. Okay, fine. You got me. You can teach a new dog new tricks. That's the joke.
As long as that dog is a border collie that got run over.
He got run over.
Alright, well, just like that, Dingo's hard work vanishes. Was that an Elsa? It did go right on top of the inkwell. Let's be careful with that. There it goes.
Ton of ink at his disposal. Magic Mirror.
Boom.
We're going to start with Spirit of Winter. Now we're exerted. Cannons can kill one thing. See what Dingo wants to do. It's probably draw a card, but I guess he can't draw and play cannons, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And quest for 1. Going to go back Nicholas Rausch's way.
And we've been through so many cards from Nick Rausch's deck. It's going to be maybe pretty difficult to deal with this Elsa, especially because it's going to get a free quest in here, and then any answers from Dingo might protect it even further.
All right, Ariel's going to grab it, Be Our Guest. We can play Be Our Guest and still play a 5 or a 6 drop. We cannot play a Whole New World. I believe that will deck us, but we can play Stitch Rockstar and Be Our Guest. We're playing fast. We know we're almost out of time.
And it seems like most of Nick's deck is Carefree Surfers at this point.
Right.
We've seen those a couple times. Only 4 cards left in deck for Nick. I don't know if he has stuff, but then again, these characters are pretty challenging for Dingo to remove.
All right, we play Sorceress, draw. We have Magic Mirror to draw. Beast Hardheaded is the pickup.
Dingo wishing he was a New World player at this point. But exactly this turn. Any later and it kills both players.
Now the question for Dingo is, do we double attack into the Tinkerbell or do we ignore it? Ooh, maybe a nice pickup here. We found a giant fairy, and I believe we can still play it. That'll deal 1 to the opposing characters. Okay. Now, we have to ink a Beast Hardheaded to get up to 6, and that'll allow us to play the giant fairy. Kills the opponent's one, and Nick Rausch says, that's
Wow.
enough. I only got Carefree Surfers left, and I only have 4 cards in deck. So,
Yeah.
you win. You win. Dingo ties it up 1-1 in a marathon game number 2 that involved multiple copies of A Whole New World. Both players playing the game for long periods of time, thanks to that huge burst of resources. Feels like Whole New World might be one of the reasons why the games are taking so long, huh?
That's definitely true. You get through multiple early games, except when you get to the second and third early games, players are playing multiple cards in a turn and just able to find exactly what they need to keep their opponents at bay. And the game just swings back and forth, especially with the power of Grab Your Sword. That's definitely been one of the standouts today, and one of the main reasons that most of these players are playing Steel.
All right, as these players shuffle up here for game number 3, just like to take a moment and shout out our sponsors once again for sponsoring the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational. First and foremost, thank you so much to tcgplayer.com. They have given us the lion's share of the prize pool to provide to these players, and we couldn't have had this event without them, so thank you so much. Make sure to check out tcgplayer.com for all your TCG needs, from singles of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, and now Disney's Lorcana. Everyone sells on TCG Player. Heck, I've sold on TCG Player, I think, back in the day. We are almost underway here. Players are finishing mulligans, and once they finish, we will begin. I also want to say thank you to Ultimate Guard. Their products are a cut above the competition when it comes to TCG supplies from deck boxes to sleeves. The katana sleeves are excellent, and check out the archive deck box if you need to hold large amounts of cards. It's a nice one. And big thank you to Cards and Castles 2. Cards and Castles 2 is a card battler that plays like a tactics game, and you can find that on Steam right now, and you can play for free. It's in early access, and you can use code Apex Gaming for 5 free boosters. We're underway here for game number 3. Rausch on the play, leads with Lilo making a wish.
And in game number 1, it was a little bit surprising that Dingo was able to run Nick out of cards so effectively. Nick did draw a few extra off Carefree Surfers and Stitch Rockstar, but Dingo has card draw in his deck too. A lot of it I put down to the Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Rogers from Dingo's side, able to put out a lot more damage than you might usually expect out of a steel deck.
All right, things getting a little gummy for Rausch. Has a cannons and another uninkable in hand. I believe it's a grab your sword and a fire the cannons. And now Rausch, considering his options here, has Rapunzel, which he might want to ink, but also has an Ariel, which he will want to play this turn. He's going to go for that. Looking at the top 4 cards, we're looking for a song, and we're definitely going to be questing. They know the deck lists, and I don't believe there are any Rafikis on YungDingo's side. Can I get confirmation on that?
That is correct.
Yeah, has a high number of uninkables already. Couldn't quite afford the Rafikis, which are excellent against these aggressive Amber decks, but these players do have full information, so we do see Stitch go ahead and quest. It is relatively safe here outside of direct removal like Fire the Cannons.
Yeah, this was part of when we were talking about the Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Rogers earlier. A lot of the reason that card started getting cut was not just uninkable by itself, but the fact that you want to be playing the full 4 Fire the Cannons, and that motivates you to play more copies of Captain Hook.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of uninkables. It's 8 as a package if you want to play the full thing.
All right,
that
Nick,
doesn't leave a lot of room for others.
Nick finds a nice one here off Ariel, finds an inkable song, and he turns that directly into a resource, and we're going to use that to play Fire the Cannons and kill the Maleficent Sorceress, and we get to quest for 2. Going to go back YungDingo's way with a relatively scary board. Let's see if he has anything to compensate.
Yeah, the follow-up might be this Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer, or instead, this is much better, Captain Hook.
4 cost 3/4. If you have cannons in your opener and your opponent's playing stuff that's vulnerable, that Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger, is quite strong. It's not inkable though, so it requires some sacrifices to be played. We're gonna shift Stitch Rockstar, and now what do we do? Maybe say go. Well, maybe sing a Be Our Guest with an Ariel, but I feel like leaving that vulnerable to Captain Hook is a little awkward. I might play Be Our Guest as a resource here in the Inkwell, but if you don't find a character to play next turn for Rockstar, it's super awkward. So maybe just hold on to it. I just hate missing an Inkwell drop.
Yeah, Nick shifted that Stitch very confidently to then be unsure what his next play was going to be, but definitely values that 5 willpower against the steel.
All right, 2 plays here for Dingo. We're going to go Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer and then a reduced cost Broom. It's going to allow him to shuffle, I think it was a Friends on the other side.
It was a Maleficent
Sorceress back into the deck. Now we're going to go back Roush's way. Starts with, ooh, what was that? Captain Hook. So we start the chain, or sorry, Aladdin. That's fine. Riff Raff, Street Rat.
And if we can, the best possible here is drawing into a second copy of Grab Your Sword. We did slow down a little. And Nick's going to try to sing Be Our Guest here. The dream, like I said, is a second copy of Grab Your Sword. We still have 2 singers left over. Looking to be able to clear all of the opponent's board as the best possible.
Mm-hmm. We found a Simba Bodyguard. We're going to play this and draw a card. And if we find a second copy of Grab Your Sword, things are going to be from 100 to 0 for YungDingo. But instead, we have a game, and it's going to continue on. No questing for Rausch. And go back Dingo's way.
Yeah, as this game kind of slows down and Nick builds out his board with this Rockstar, that's kind of just giving Dingo time to find Grab Your Sword and then take care of most of what Nick has going on.
All right, Hook eats Simba. Simba down. 2 damage on it. Broom eats, comes back. Sweep them up. Nice little clear from Dingo. Not a full clear, but able to get 3 characters off the battlefield for essentially no cost other than a few points of willpower.
Yeah, pretty efficient turn. But does now open up Dingo to just a single copy of Grab Your Sword.
All right, we're going to start with 2 damage on the aerial, and then we're going to ink a broom. We're going to play another hook, Jolly Roger Captain, and we're going to blow up the aerial all the way. And now we're going to go back Rausch's way. Still has an active Rockstar. Only 5 ink, so can't play Carefree Surfer. We'll see if he finds a string of 1s and 2s here. That's a 3. That's a Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician. Not quite what he was looking for, but singing this copy of Grab Your Sword could be great because it allows him to clear most of the characters from Dingo's side.
And this is what Brennan was talking about when he said willpower equals cards. You know, Dingo's cards are efficient. This Captain of the Jolly Roger able to pick up fire the cannons for free, but that's still, you know, a resource that he gained and then immediately has to spend just to get through those 3 willpower characters.
All right, well, Dingo needs to fire the cannons or something here to be able to finish off the Stitch Rockstar. Nick says, you know what, I'm going to quest. I'm going to leave it vulnerable for a quarter of a turn, and we'll see if you have the answer. Right now, I think the answer is no.
Oh, there's another Captain Hook in Dingo's hand, so the answer is
Ooh.
actually yes.
It's always yes. Hook. Deals 3. Another hook comes down, gets back that fire the cannons. This hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger, has looked so much better than it did in my personal testing, right?
Right. Dingo has found a good shell for it here. I think in game 2, that was really the only reason he was actually able to outlast Nick, as Nick drew more cards, but Dingo got that virtual card advantage.
Maleficent Sorceress to pick up off of the Magic Mirror draw, and now Dingo firmly ahead. Rausch with very few cards left, but he has a Carefree Surfer in hand that's looking kind of mid. The Tinkerbell Tiny Tactician likely going to loot here, but that leaves it vulnerable to being challenged. But we have to turn these Lilos into ink or something.
Yeah, it's really close to an outright losing play to just play out those Lilos. You haven't seen any giant fairies from Dingo's side yet. And Nick maybe just setting himself up here to possibly be able to get down a Carefree Surfer next turn. But if Dingo is at all scared of that or scared of a giant fairy, he'll just trade off, get some challenging in just like this, and the Carefree Surfer is not going to be coming down for long. Wow.
Yeah, big clear for YungDingo, and now Nick Rausch is in trouble. The giant fairy comes down and cleans it up. The Captain Hook should have 3 damage on it, or 2 damage on it rather. Oh, and that's it. Rausch just says, I got nothing in hand, and you're so far ahead on resources. And he just packs it in, and YungDingo defeats Nick Rausch and ends his tournament. Congratulations to Dingo, but the day is not over yet. He's got 1 more match to play before he can say that I'm in the top 8, and I'm into day 2. Let's head on back to the booth, and we'll give you a rundown of exactly what happened in that round. That was our losers pod. All of our players that were 1 and 2 from the first pods were paired against each other, where the loser was going to be knocked out of the event, and the winner is going to be moving to the elimination pod, which we'll be having next. So in this elimination pod, we're going to have the following players, and we're going to randomize who plays who. Mason Clark, who was defeated by Dawn, he's going to be in there. Krista O, she lost to Frank Carson last round, and she's going to be there. And then Kurt Spies, who we watched play a lot over the last 24 or 48 hours or whatever.
Yep.
And those 3 players are going to be facing off against the winners from our most recent pod there. And that's YungDingo, Brian Koval, and Brennan DeCandio. So we're going to take a short break while we get everything set up. For now, enjoy this video of Cards and Castles 2, where I continue exploring the program, and I hope you explore it with me. We'll be right back after these messages.